At 5:41 local time, the bridge of the lead U.S. naval vessel is already awake, already watching, already moving through that rare kind of silence that only happens when every person on board understands how quickly the Strait of Hormuz can change. Dawn has barely touched the horizon. The waterway is narrow, merchant traffic is heavy, tankers move through the lanes like floating steel islands, leaving almost no margin for error. Then a voice from CIC cuts through the quiet. 3 fast surface contacts, bearing 031, closing. On the bridge, nobody wastes a word. Heads turn towards starboard. At first, there is only haze, pale morning light, and empty water. Then the optics operator finds them. 3 small hulls, low on the surface, fast, very fast. No fishing gear, no commercial markings, no AIS signal. Just 3 sharp wakes cutting across the water as the boats move down from the Iranian side of the strait. The officer of the deck steps closer to the repeater screen. Range, 8 nautical miles, speed increasing, 28 knots and climbing. In that instant, the atmosphere changes. These are not local boats drifting through traffic. They are not simply observing from a distance. They are moving directly toward the American formation. Ahead, the lead vessel holds steady on its transit course. Behind it, 2 more U.S. naval vessels maintain disciplined spacing, each one locked into the same narrow corridor through one of the most closely watched waterways on Earth. There is no sudden turn, no confusion, no raised voices, only steel, speed, and procedure. Bridge to bridge, hail, the captain says. His voice is calm and controlled. He does not need to speak louder. The radio watch sends the first call over international maritime frequencies. Unidentified fast craft, this is a United States naval vessel conducting lawful transit. You are closing at an unsafe speed. Alter course immediately. No answer. The contacts keep coming. Inside the operations center, the radar picture tightens second by second. Bearings update, distance closes. One of the 3 boats shifts slightly left. Not enough to break away, but enough to suggest they are moving with purpose. Another stays on a direct line toward the lead ship's starboard bow. The 3rd trails wider, angling toward the space between the 1st and 2nd American vessels. That is the detail that changes everything. Not just the speed, not just the distance, the pattern. Closest point of approach is shrinking on all 3, CIC reports. Possible coordinated approach. The captain gives a single nod. Set condition 3, key stations manned, record everything. Across the ship, the posture shifts without chaos. Sailors move faster, but not wildly. The forward mount turns a few degrees off centerline, visible enough to be understood, restrained enough to send a clear message. Remote optics tighten their focus. The electronic monitoring team begins logging every signal. On the weather decks, watchstanders shift their eyes from open water to the approaching wakes, now clear enough to see without binoculars. The 2nd hail goes out, first in English, then again in prepared Farsi maritime phrasing, the kind written for exactly this kind of moment. Still nothing. No reply, no course change, no sign of slowing down. At 5:44 local time, the closest Iranian craft slips inside 6 nautical miles. Through the long-range camera, its shape becomes clearer. An open deck, crew in dark clothing, helmets, a mounted system near the stern. Another object forward, long and unclear, possibly a tube-shaped rig, possibly deck equipment, or possibly something secured in a way that is meant to look uncertain from a distance. And that uncertainty is part of the pressure. Everyone on the bridge understands that. Visual confirms personnel with equipment topside, the optics operator reports. The captain keeps his eyes ahead. Do not overreact. That is the challenge in the Strait of Hormuz. It is not just about seeing a risky situation, it is about reading it correctly and reading it fast. The lead craft now throws a bright white wake across the calm morning water, cutting toward the projected path of the American vessel instead of running parallel to it. The 2nd Iranian boat moves wider to the right, almost as if testing whether the U.S. ship will give up its lane. The 3rd stays farther back, tracking the space between the American vessels, putting pressure on the shape of the entire formation rather than only one ship. This is not random movement. This is pressure measured in speed, distance, and timing. CIC to bridge. Contact 1 now 32 knots. From the bridge windows, the crew can see it clearly now. The boat is small. Its purpose is not. It is closing fast enough that every second begins to matter. In a waterway this narrow, with merchant ships nearby and U.S. naval vessels locked into a disciplined transit line, a small fast craft does not need much to create a serious situation. Speed is enough. Poor judgment is enough. 10 more seconds of the wrong decision is enough. The captain gives the next order. Prepare helicopter launch. Aft, the message is already moving toward the flight deck. Tie-down crews move quickly. Air crew begins stepping into position. The helicopter is not in the air yet, but the ship has entered the next phase. The warnings have not worked. Now the American presence is about to become much harder to ignore. At 5:46, the nearest Iranian boat crosses another invisible line. It is now close enough for bridge personnel to make out movement on deck with their own eyes. One crewman turns toward the stern-mounted system. Another steadies himself against the rail as the boat pounds through its own wake and keeps accelerating. No one on the American bridge says much. They do not need to. Every screen says it, every wake says it, every second says it. The Strait of Hormuz has become a tightening corridor of water, steel, and decisions, and the Iranian boats are still coming closer. At 5:47 local time, the flight deck is no longer just a deck. It is a machine in motion. The MH-60R Seahawk comes alive beneath red safety lights and pale dawn. The rotor blades begin to turn, slow at first, then faster, slicing the morning air into a heavy, rising pulse that rolls across the stern of the trailing U.S. vessel. Deck crew crouch low, signaling through rotor wash and the damp Gulf air. Ahead of them, the three American naval vessels hold formation, still moving through the Strait of Hormuz with almost no room to turn. Any sudden maneuver here could turn the entire transit into confusion. On the bridge of the lead ship, the nearest Iranian fast craft is now close enough to follow without optics. Its bow slams over the short chop, throwing spray in two sharp sheets as it continues cutting across the formation's projected path. Then the call comes from aft. "Helicopter lifting." The captain answers without taking his eyes off the water ahead. "Get me eyes over all three." The Seahawk clears the deck and slides low over the ship's wake, nose down, building speed quickly. It does not climb high. It stays low over the water inside the tense maritime space, close enough for the crew to understand the movement below with absolute clarity. And from above, the picture looks even more serious. Warship Hawk 1 has visual on all contacts, the pilot reports. Their movement appears coordinated. Inside the helicopter, the sensor operator guides the MX-10 camera across the scene below. One Iranian boat is driving toward the lead ship's starboard bow. A second is moving wider, holding position just outside the beam, almost as if waiting to see whether the American vessel will adjust course. The third is exactly where CIC feared it would be, cutting toward the narrow space between the second and third U.S. naval vessels. This is not random movement. This is not civilian confusion. It is a three-angle approach. Hawk 1 copies mounted equipment on at least two vessels, the sensor operator says. Multiple personnel topside. Helmets, life vests, no visible fishing gear, no flags. The helicopter banks left and pushes forward, crossing the beam of the lead American ship before turning toward the nearest Iranian craft. From below, the Seahawk is impossible to miss now. Gray fuselage, U.S. markings, sensors looking straight down. A clear warning without a single dramatic move. The aircrew sends the first airborne hail. Iranian fast craft, this is United States Navy helicopter. You are operating unsafely near coalition vessels conducting lawful transit. Alter course now. The message goes out in English, then again in prepared maritime Farsi phrasing. No reply. The nearest Iranian boat increases speed. On the bridge, the officer of the deck watches the range numbers keep falling. 5,000 yards. The captain says nothing. He does not have to. The ship is already sending its message. The forward mount remains trained just off-center. Close defense systems are powered and tracking. Electronic monitoring teams continue recording every radar sweep, every transmission, every signal flicker coming from the boats and from the shoreline beyond them. Then the wider picture begins to tighten. Electronic watch reports new emissions from the North Shore, CIC says. Low-power surface search radar, bearing consistent with the Iranian coast. Another voice follows almost immediately. Additional surface contact farther north, larger than the fast craft. Still outside the immediate zone. That matters. Because now the three small boats ahead are no longer the entire problem. They are only the fastest moving part of it. Below, the strait keeps crowding in. Merchant traffic is building with the sunrise. A tanker to port continues southbound, heavy and slow, with almost no room to adjust. Farther ahead, a smaller commercial vessel begins edging uncertainly inside the lane, likely seeing the wakes, hearing the radio calls, and realizing too late that military traffic is closing around it. This is how dangerous moments begin, not always with a first strike, sometimes with pressure, noise, misread distance, wrong timing, and too little water between too many moving steel hulls. Hawk 1, make a show pass, the captain orders. The Seahawk responds at once. The pilot drops lower, skimming across the formation's forward quarter before swinging toward the lead Iranian craft. The rotor wash pounds the surface below, flattening the water into a gray, rippling sheet. The helicopter does not pass directly over the boat. It does not try to provoke. It simply makes its presence impossible to ignore. From inside the cabin, the crew can see more now. One man on the Iranian boat turns his head upward and lifts binoculars toward the helicopter. Another remains near the stern-mounted system, not fully taking position behind it, but not stepping away from it either. That gray line is getting thinner with every second. The helicopter repeats the warning. Alter course immediately. You are creating a risk of collision. Still no answer. Then, at 5:51, the second Iranian craft makes the move that changes the atmosphere across every American ship in the formation. Instead of staying outside the beam, it cuts sharply inward, entering water already crowded by commercial traffic and the lead warship's safety zone. Its bow throws up hard spray as it slices across the edge of a tanker's wake, bounces once, then corrects its line. On the bridge, one watchstander says what everyone else is thinking. They're trying to force the lane. Not trying to start the worst-case scenario. Not trying to be the first to cross the final line. They are trying to force hesitation, force a turn, force the American formation to react on camera, on radar, and in front of every ship watching the strait. But the U.S. ships do not react the way they want. They hold course. They hold spacing. They hold lane. The Seahawk pulls into a tight orbit, and the sensor operator zooms in even farther. Bridge, be advised. Multiple individuals on the lead craft moving near the forward mount. Possible preparation of a more aggressive posture. That report lands hard. The captain reaches for the sound-powered phone and gives the next order in the same flat, steady tone he has used all morning. Advise all ships. Force protection posture is elevated. No one takes action unless I authorize it or the intent becomes unmistakable. At 5:53, the nearest Iranian boat is close enough that individual faces are visible through magnified optics. The second boat is cutting through rough water near the commercial lane. The third is still pressing toward the gap farther back. 3 American warships, 3 Iranian fast craft, civilian vessels all around them, coastal radar active behind them, and above it all, 1 Navy helicopter circling low, watching the entire picture tighten at once. The strait is getting smaller by the second. At 5:54 local time, the line between intimidation and collision begins to disappear. The lead Iranian fast craft is no longer pacing. It is no longer holding a tense angle from a safer distance. It is driving directly across the projected boat track of the lead U.S. warship, fast enough that every watchstander on the bridge can see the danger without needing a screen. Contact 1 crossing left to right, CIC reports. Closest point of approach collapsing. Then the numbers come faster. 2,000 yards, 1,700, contact still accelerating. On the bridge, nobody shouts. That makes it feel even heavier. The calm means the situation is serious enough that nobody wants noise in the chain. Ahead, the Iranian boat slams over the chop, dragging a wall of white water behind it. Compared to the American destroyer, it is small. But size is not what matters here. Geometry matters, timing matters. One fast craft in the wrong water at the wrong second can force a warship into a choice no captain wants to make. Collision, embarrassment, or escalation. The officer of the deck keeps his eyes fixed on the contact. Helm, stand by. The order hangs in the air, not execute. Stand by. Because the first rule in a moment like this is simple. Do not be the one who breaks formation unless there is no other choice. Overhead, the Seahawk crew sees the same picture from above and calls it first. Hawk 1 to lead warship. Contact 1 is cutting hard across your bow. Unsafe, repeat, unsafe, possible deliberate bow cross. The helicopter banks tighter. Its rotor wash tears at the surface below. Its cameras remain locked on the Iranian boat, zoomed close enough to track every person aboard. 1 at the helm, 1 crouched behind the center console, 1 near the stern-mounted system, another near the bow, bracing with one hand and reaching with the other toward a rail-mounted tube-shaped frame that still cannot be clearly identified. The pilot keys the mic again. Iranian fast craft, alter course now. Alter course immediately. No reply. At 5:55, the American destroyer finally makes the smallest correction possible. Not a break, not a dodge. It is subtle, disciplined, almost invisible to anyone who is not watching the waterline or reading the repeater heading. But the fact that the adjustment happens at all tells the bridge everything. This is no longer routine shadowing. This is a forced maneuver. Contact 1 has entered the safety envelope, CIC reports. That single line changes the entire posture of the ship. On the forward decks, the crews at key stations focus harder on the approaching hull. The main mount remains trained slightly off-axis, controlled and deliberate, but every sailor near a critical position feels the shift. This moment has moved into another category. Across the superstructure, sensors and optics continue pulling in detail. Then, from the electronic watch space, a new report cuts through. Possible directed tracking behavior from Contact 2. On the starboard side, the second Iranian craft has moved closer, and now its attention appears to be shifting, not toward the lead warship, but toward the helicopter. It is not a full sustained tracking lock, not yet, but it is enough of a directed sensor cue that nobody dismisses it. Hawk 1 copies possible sensor attention from the second craft, the aircrew reports. No lock tone, behavior is consistent with tracking. That is the moment the air above the water changes. Until now, the danger has lived mostly in hulls, wakes, angles, and distance. Now it begins to feel like something more serious. The captain gives the next order in the same cold, steady tone. Defensive systems track only. Close protection teams up. No action unless authorized, or intent becomes unmistakable. Across the ship, systems come alive another step. Not loudly, not dramatically, just ready. The close defense mounts make tiny corrections, almost mechanical and insect-like. The defensive launcher remains steady, tied into the wider protective network. On the weather decks, force protection teams settle into position with strict arcs and clear rules. No one wants a response too early in the Strait of Hormuz. No one wants one too late either. Then the second Iranian boat makes its own mistake. While trying to push inward on the formation and avoid the wake of a slow-moving commercial tanker to port, it cuts into rough water at the wrong angle. The bow rises hard, then slams down harder. For 1 sharp second, the entire craft yaws sideways. From above, the Seahawk captures the moment clearly. Spray erupts. One crewman stumbles. The stern-mounted system swings offline. The boat recovers, but not cleanly. And that wobble matters. It confirms what every American sailor out there already suspects. The Iranian crews are pushing right at the edge of control. And in crowded water, at speed, on a morning like this, the edge of control is where one mistake can change everything. Hawk 1, they almost lost it, the sensor operator reports. Lead and second craft are both operating aggressively. Their formation is unstable. Behind the lead ship, the third U.S. warship reports the back half of the problem. Contact 3 still pressing the gap between second and third ships. No crossing attempt yet. Holding pressure. Now the picture is complete. One Iranian craft has forced a near bow cross on the lead ship. A second has shown possible sensor tracking toward the helicopter and nearly lost control near commercial traffic. A third is still trying to pressure the rear of the American line. This is the peak. This is the moment where every American system is watching. Every watch team is recording. And every Iranian crewman is one bad decision away from turning a routine transit into an incident that could shake the entire region before breakfast. The Seahawk pilot looks down and makes the call. Request low show of presence pass. Approval comes instantly. The helicopter drops lower than before, angling across the forward line of the nearest Iranian craft. Not directly overhead, not reckless, but close enough that the rotor wash pounds the water flat in front of the boat's bow. Spray lashes across the small craft. The crew aboard it reacts at once. One man ducks, another grabs for the rail. The stern-mounted system swings again, then steadies. And for the first time all morning, the lead Iranian craft hesitates. Not much, just enough. The wake shortens. The bow angle relaxes. A few knots bleed away from its speed. On the bridge of the lead U.S. naval vessel, nobody celebrates. Nobody says anything that does not need to be said. Because farther north, through the haze and early morning light, another larger contact is still moving, and the Americans still do not know whether Iran has finished applying pressure or whether it is simply changing the shape of it. At 5:58 local time, the first real sign of hesitation appears on the Iranian side. It is small, almost invisible. You would miss it unless you were watching through stabilized optics or reading the wake through salt haze and dawn glare. But on the bridge of the lead U.S. warship, they see it immediately. Contact 1 speed decreasing. No one reacts outwardly. The captain does not smile. The officer of the deck does not relax. Inside the Combat Information Center, nobody says the words backing down. Because out here, in the Strait of Hormuz, a pause means nothing until it lasts long enough to become a pattern. Still, the change is real. The lead Iranian fast craft, the one that forced the closest bow cross and pushed the formation toward the edge of a serious maritime incident, is no longer driving in at the same angle. Its wake is shorter now. Its bow is no longer cutting directly across the destroyer's projected path. Instead, it begins a shallow drift outward, the kind of movement that gives its crew room to deny they ever change course, while giving the American ships the one thing they need most: space. Above the formation, the MH-60R Seahawk stays in orbit. Nose slightly down. Sensors fixed. The pilot keeps the helicopter just far enough forward to control the visual picture without turning presence into provocation. Below, the sea lane is still crowded. A tanker continues southbound off the American port side, heavy, slow, and almost indifferent to the tension around it. Farther ahead, a smaller commercial vessel has finally cleared the worst of the compression. The most dangerous minutes have passed. Barely. Hawk 1 confirms contact 1 opening angle, 2 degrees. Now 4, the pilot reports. Contact no longer holding direct approach geometry. That is the phrase the bridge has been waiting for. Not retreat, not surrender. No longer holding direct approach geometry. It means the American formation is starting to win back the lane. The second Iranian craft accepts it more slowly. It remains farther out to starboard, still trying to look aggressive, still pacing in a wide arc as if it can preserve the appearance of control. But appearance is all it has left now. The moment it lost clean water and nearly skipped sideways across the tanker's wake, its leverage dropped. It can still crowd, it can still pressure, but it can no longer force the American lead ship into another meaningful correction without creating a serious risk for itself. Contact 2, holding outside immediate safety envelope. CIC reports. No confirmed lock, no further tightening. The third craft, the one that spent the entire encounter trying to pressure the space between the second and third U.S. ships, finally begins to lose its own geometry. The problem for that boat is simple. The American ships never broke line. That matters more than speed, more than noise. More than intimidation, the U.S. formation did not split apart. It did not become 3 separate problems. It remained one controlled transit. And that is exactly why the Iranian pressure begins to fail. At 6:01, the second U.S. warship reports the gap astern widening by several hundred yards. The third ship confirms the same. The Iranian boat trying to pressure the seam has run out of useful angles. It can still pace at the edge. But pacing is not control. Pressure is not command. One by one, the options in front of the Iranian crews begin to disappear. The Seahawk makes another deliberate pass. This one is wider, slower. Not because the situation is fully over, but because the Americans want every lens, every camera, and every crewman on those boats to understand the reality of the moment. They are being watched from above, tracked from 3 ships below, recorded by multiple systems at once. If they push back in now, the record will be clear, precise, and complete. Inside the helicopter cabin, the sensor operator zooms in on the lead craft. The details are sharp now, water sliding off hull. A crewman near the stern-mounted system no longer standing in a ready posture. Another looking back instead of forward. The body language has changed. Even from a distance, discipline can read hesitation. Hawk 1 to bridge. Crew on Contact 1 are moving away from the stern-mounted station. That gets logged instantly. On the lead, U.S. warship, the captain says only 4 words. Maintain pressure, hold course. And that is the American answer. No chase. No dramatic turn toward the Iranian boats. No attempt to punish a move that is already starting to fall apart. Just professional pressure. Forward motion. Formation discipline. At 6:03, the first radio transmission from the Iranian side finally comes through. Weak, clipped, carried over open bridge-to-bridge frequencies. American warship, you are near Iranian patrol area. Adjust heading to starboard. It comes too late to change anything. The response from the lead U.S. warship is immediate, calm, and flat. Iranian fast craft. This is United States warship conducting lawful transit in international waters. Your unsafe maneuvers are being recorded. Remain clear. No anger, no argument, no extra words. Just the lane, just the record, just the ship continuing exactly where it was already going. The lead Iranian craft loses another few knots, then a few more. Its bow turns farther away. Minutes later, the second craft mirrors the movement, drifting outward to preserve pride more than position. The third, now well aft, finally stops pressing the gap and settles into a loose trail. Less than 10 minutes earlier, it looked like a coordinated 3-angle approach. Now it looks like 3 separate boats trying not to be the last one still pushing. That is how these encounters end when one side keeps control. Not with a dramatic retreat, but with the geometry collapsing in real time. On the bridge of the American lead ship, the tension does not disappear all at once. It drains slowly, the way seawater slides off steel after a wave breaks over the bow. Watchstanders still track every heading change. The captain still watches the larger northern contact that never fully committed. CIC continues logging emissions from the shoreline. Nothing about the Strait of Hormuz allows relief to arrive suddenly, but the worst of it is gone now. The lane is open again, the formation is intact, and by 6:06 local time, the 3 U.S. warships are no longer being pressed. They are simply continuing their transit exactly as planned, while the Iranian boats fall farther astern. Still visible, still equipped, but no longer controlling the encounter. By 6:08 local time, the Strait of Hormuz looks almost normal again. Almost. The 3 U.S. warships remain in formation, moving at steady transit speed, cutting a disciplined path through one of the narrowest and most sensitive waterways on Earth. Ahead, the channel begins to open by degrees. Astern, the Iranian fast craft remain on the screen, but the shape of the moment has completely changed. They are no longer driving the geometry, they are no longer forcing decisions, they are no longer inside the American safety envelope, they are behind it. On the bridge of the lead warship, nobody mistakes that for victory in the loud sense of the word. No cheering, no relieved laughter, just a quiet return to the rhythm of a ship that never actually stopped doing its job. Contact 1, now 6,000 yards and opening. Contact 2, pacing wide on the starboard quarter. Contact 3, falling back astern of the second ship. Each update is logged. Time, range, bearing, course change. Every unsafe approach, every unanswered hail, every near crossing. Every moment the line tightened, then opened again. Because in a place like this, the first contest is not always fought with force. Sometimes it is fought with memory. Above the formation, the MH-60R Seahawk makes one final orbit. Wider now, calmer, but still precise. The pilot keeps the aircraft low enough to dominate the visual picture and high enough to preserve room to maneuver. Inside the cabin, the sensor operator makes one last sweep across the 3 Iranian boats. Their wakes are shorter now. Their posture has changed. No more aggressive crossing angles. No more attempt to split the space between ships. One stern-mounted system remains visible but unattended. Another crewman has taken off his helmet. Small details, but they matter. Pressure looks different when it is rising. It looks different when it has failed. Hawk 1 to all ships. Iranian contacts are no longer maneuvering for intercept. Recommend maintaining transit and continuing track. The recommendation is almost unnecessary. The American formation has been doing exactly that the entire time. And that is the point. Iran tried to break the lane without crossing the final line. It tried to create hesitation. It tried to force one American ship to turn sharply, then another, until a lawful transit looked uncertain from the outside. But U.S. Navy ships are built around something stronger than steel, sensors, and radar. Procedure, spacing, trust between bridges. The lead warship never rushed out of the lane, the second never overcorrected, the third never drifted loose at the rear. CIC stayed linked. The bridges stayed calm. Defensive stations stayed ready, but controlled. The helicopter gave the formation eyes where ship-mounted optics could not. And together, that discipline denied the Iranian boats the one thing they needed most: a break in the line. At 6:11, the lead Iranian craft finally turns far enough away that there is no ambiguity left. Not a tactical drift, not a shallow feint, a real separation. The second follows shortly after, widening its starboard arc and sliding toward a parallel course that says everything without admitting anything. The third trails off with the least dignity of all, still visible on the radar repeater, but now reduced to what it should have been from the beginning: a spectator with an engine. The captain on the lead U.S. warship studies the updated track picture for another long moment before speaking. Secure elevated posture in phases. Keep all contacts under observation. That is as close as anyone gets to celebration. Below decks, the process begins exactly the way it should. Not all at once, not carelessly. Key stations remain manned while the tactical picture is reviewed. CIC continues recording shoreline emissions. Electronic warfare technicians label the captured data. Radio logs are checked against timestamps. Optical footage from the bridge and the Seahawk is backed up. Every close approach is matched to exact range, heading, and rate of closure. If anyone asks later who pushed, who held, and who crossed which line, the answer will not depend on opinion. It will depend on the record. At 6:14, the Seahawk receives recovery instructions and turns back toward the stern of the trailing warship. The flight deck crew is already in position. Bright jerseys against gray steel. Hands ready, body language steady. The helicopter approaches over the wake, eases down through its own rotor wash, and settles onto the deck with the same control the formation has shown all morning. Another system secured, another phase complete. Out on the water, the 3 U.S. warships continue northbound. Their bows rise and fall in the early light. Their wakes stretch long and clean behind them. The Iranian boats are still there, but smaller now. Dark specks against a brightening sea. Their intercept is over. Their pressure has failed. And the transit they tried to disrupt is still moving forward, exactly where it was always meant to go. No direct action was taken, no launch was made, no hull was damaged, and yet the message could not be clearer. Iran came in fast, close, and deliberate. 3 American warships answered with spacing, steel, sensors, and discipline. They never lost the lane, they never lost formation, and they never gave control of the encounter away. By the time the sun is fully up over Hormuz, the moment is already becoming what the U.S. Navy does best with tense mornings at sea: a completed transit, a finished log, a lesson recorded in full.